Mark and Amy meet up for their first date. They had met for the first time a few days earlier in a club, and were immediately attracted to each other, so much so that they decided to exchange phone numbers so they could continue their acquaintance in a quieter place in the following days. Now they can finally have a relaxed conversation in a quiet place. After about 20 minutes, however, the only thought going through Amy's mind is, "What am I doing here with this guy?" When they had met in the club a few nights earlier, Amy was happy to have a light conversation with Mark. After all, she doesn't go out on Saturday nights to talk about quantum physics. Today, however, she hoped that getting to know him better would also bring out deeper and more interesting parts of his character, but instead, in 20 minutes of conversation in which he talked practically only about himself, Mark gave her the impression of being a superficial person and not at all interesting, and Amy can't wait to go home. Now tell me, how many of you have been in such situations? I gave the example of a first date, but it can just as well be a simple gathering of friends, or an evening with acquaintances and relatives. If you have any funny or interesting anecdotes, share them in the comments. Let's see if we can make a collection of funny stories under this video. Back to the topic, what can we do to avoid finding ourselves in Mark's shoes? After all, he seems like a great guy, very outgoing, who has no problem making new acquaintances, but when it comes to deepening these acquaintances, he often gives the impression of being a shallow and uninteresting person. In this video, we're going to look at 7 ways to be more interesting people, and consequently also more attractive. Maybe this won't be the video that will help you get more first dates, but without a doubt, by following these tips you'll be more successful when it's time to deepen an acquaintance. As usual, if you like the video, I kindly ask to give us a thumb up, and if you think some of your friends might benefit from it, to share it. Thank you very much, and let's get started. 1. Develop your sense of humor. If you don't feel like developing the following 6 points, this alone will undoubtedly make you more interesting and popular. Having a good sense of humor, knowing when not to take yourself too seriously, and not being afraid to joke even about your own shortcomings or flaws, will not only make you a likable and easygoing person, but will also show your maturity and self-confidence. In fact, only an extremely self-confident person has the courage to joke about his or her shortcomings. Within certain limits, of course. Various research also suggests that funny men are perceived by women as more attractive and intelligent. 2. Fight laziness and have interesting experiences. Interesting people have interesting experiences. Each of us should have a wish list, that is, experiences we want to have before we die. This list obviously varies from person to person, but not having one suggests that a person is content simply to get by day to day. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, let's be clear. If one is happy to live that way, that's perfectly fine. But that's not the point of the video. If we want to be more interesting, we have to do more interesting things. It's very simple. Personally, my primary goal is to visit 100 countries before I die. I have about 30 more to go. Traveling is an experience in itself, but within each trip I also know that I'm going to have unique experiences. Obviously, I'm not a multimillionaire who can afford to be on vacation 365 days a year, but I try to do the best I can within my means. And that's the key to everything, trying to do your best according to your situation. In short, the main message here is not to end up just doing the same old things, because that makes a person all but interesting. The law of laziness states, the lazier you are, the less interesting you will be. The more proactive you are, the more interesting you will be. It's often easy to settle into a boring everyday routine, but honestly, how do you think this approach will make a person more interesting? 3. Find a true passion. How do you feel when you find yourself having a conversation with someone who has a genuine passion for something? Whether it's a sport, a musical instrument, or any hobby, when we talk to someone who genuinely loves doing something, rest assured that they will talk about it with an infectious energy full of positive emotions. After all, when we spend time with someone, it's because we want to feel good about that person, and I would think that no one actively looks to make friends with people who only talk about negative things. Having a passion can also allow you to get acquainted with other people with the same interest. A common interest is probably the best way to foster new friendships. 4. Learn to tell stories. Okay, Let's assume that you already follow the first 3 tips given in this video. You have several passions, and when it comes to having new exciting experiences, you certainly don't shy away from them. But when it comes to sharing them during a conversation, you come across as clumsy, or you fail to convey the information in an intriguing way. When you find yourself telling a story, it's not just the content of what you want to express that's important, but also the way you do it to make it interesting and make those in front of you want to listen to you all the way through. Recent research has found that people who can tell a good story are also seen as more attractive. This seems to be because skilled storytellers may seem better positioned to influence others or gain authority. Knowing how to tell a story spontaneously is a useful skill, but if you are nervous, arm yourself with a few personal anecdotes to use to liven up an otherwise dull interaction. Try to have 3 good stories on hand at all times that are likely to entertain, inform, or engage your interlocutor. 5. Listen to others. This is perhaps the most important tip on the list. Sometimes the best way to come across as more interesting and attractive is simply to close your mouth and open your ears. The importance of knowing how to listen was popularized by Dale Carnegie in his 1936 bestseller How to Make Friends and Influence People. Carnegie wrote, "You can make more friends in 2 months by being interested in others than in 2 years by trying to make others interested in you." So listen very carefully to others and try with some compassion to understand their motives and actions. Few people are really good at this. 6. Be mysterious. A mistake often made by most extroverted people is to open up too much, too soon, with a new acquaintance. Slow down. If you go out on a first date, you don't have to share the whole story of your life within the first 5 minutes just to impress the person in front of you. It happens a lot to see people who seem so desperate to get someone else's attention that after 20 minutes of getting to know them, they're already talking about things I personally wouldn't even talk to my best friend about. Make others get to know you with the right timing, especially when it comes to love relationships. After all, it's not that just because you've had a night of passion with a girl or a guy, now you have to go to extremes like introducing them immediately to the boss of the house. And with that, I am talking about your cat. 7. Surround yourself with interesting people. In general, interesting people like to hang around interesting people. Interesting people encourage people around them to do interesting things, talk about interesting topics, and engage with interesting ideas. Try asking yourself these questions. Who is the most interesting person you know? Who is the funniest person you know? Who is the most educated person you know? Who is the person you know who has traveled the most? Who is the strangest person you know? Alright, have you thought of someone for each of these questions? Great! Now go hang out with these people. If you haven't been able to find answers to these questions, then it's time you meet new people. Quoting a famous proverb, if you sleep with dogs, you'll wake up with fleas. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend the video 10 Steps to Becoming a Better Person that you can find on this channel. Thank you all for your attention. That's it for today. Have a great rest of your day.